Good afternoon and welcome to PhotoJoseph's live training episode 1800. This is a brand new series. This is ON1 Photo RAW version 2018, the 2018 edition. And this session today is an overview. If you are watching this on YouTube, which is where you probably are watching this, and you're interested in what you see here today, then there is going to be an extensive additional training to this. This overview is going to be a very high level, very fast, just take a look at what all is in here. And then over the next several weeks, probably a couple of months, we'll be going in week by week into individual components of the app and doing deep dives into them. So this is a great place to get your feet wet, to find out if it's an app you want to know more about. And if you decide that it is, then you can follow along on the entire live training series. To follow the live training series in its entirety, head over to PhotoJoseph.com. You will see the new episodes as they get uploaded there every week. And we do it live, just like it is right now, on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Pacific time. Every week, unless there's some change in the schedule, that's when that happens. It is always free to watch live, but then the show, once it's no longer live, once it is completed, it gets uploaded up to PhotoJoseph.com, and that goes to the members only area. You can, of course, buy individual episodes if you want to just download one to buy, but the best way to watch them is to sign up to become a member, either on a monthly or an annual basis, and then like a Netflix model, you have access to all of the live training, not just the stuff that's coming out right now, but everything that's been coming out for the years in years past. And in fact, we have done this app before, but the prior version to it. So we are basically starting over with this app today with ON1 Photo RAW version 2018. So with that said, again, if you like what you see, head to PhotoJoseph.com. You'll see all the information there. But for now, let's get started with ON1 Photo RAW. So we're going to start, as I said, today is really about an overview, just a very top-level view of what it is. We're going to go through the main modules in here, explain the basics of it, explain the basics of how you get your photos into here, and take a look at some of the editing tools. We will, in future lessons, go into the very deep diving into each one of these and really understand what each of these components is about. But for now, it's a high-level view. So starting off in the Browse module, incidentally, over here on the right-hand side, you'll see Browse, Develop, Effects, Layers, Resize, and then down here, Pano and Hdr. Some of them aren't available right now because we don't have things selected. But each one of those is considered a module. You can think of a module as a room, a space, whatever you want to call it. They call it modules. You move from module to module depending on what you're doing. So we're starting off in the Browse module. If you know the history of ON1, some of these modules used to be broken out as separate apps, and over years they've kind of combined and merged and modified things a little bit. So if you're coming to this from having been an ON1 customer from years and years ago and haven't seen anything new, you might be surprised to find so many things all integrated together, but that's the way that it is today. So let's get into this. We are looking at the Browse modules to start. And you'll see over here on the left-hand side, we've got our Browse tab. And there's a variety of things in here. It says folders, albums, cloud storage, and so on in here. And one of the first things you need to understand from the beginning is that you are not working in a internal library within ON1 Photo RAW like you might be used to if you're working with Apple Photos or in Lightroom CC. To a degree, Lightroom Classic, that's kind of a hybrid library, non-library model. If you came from the Aperture days, you had a library. Pretty much every other app out there is using a library. This is where all of their metadata is stored. ON1 Photo RAW is a bit different in that it doesn't actually have a centralized library. You can point it to any pictures anywhere on your system. So if you have a folder full of pictures just in the Pictures folder or on your desktop or on some external hard drive, you just point it at it and you're browsing them immediately. And then if you want to kind of catalog that to save it for later so that it browses faster, all the metadata is stored there, you can do that. But you still do not have a centralized catalog location. What this means as well is when you import photos from your memory card, pop them in your computer and import them, you're not actually importing them into the library. You are simply copying them from the card to some location in the Finder that you determine, and you do have the ability at that point to add metadata and do the kind of things that you would normally do on import, but you are not importing them into a centralized library. So it's a really important differentiation that I want to make sure that you understand. What this means is when you first launch it, if you don't have folders of photos laying around in your computer, then you're going to have nothing to look at. What I'm going to be doing here is actually looking at my library from Lightroom. So I have folders of photos that are organized in Lightroom. We'll be looking at some of those. So that's one of the cool things about this is if you have a folder structure for another app that you're using, you can take this app and just point it at that same folder structure and see the same photos there. A very important thing to remember, though, is that if you move things around in here, if you rename folders and files or move them around, that's actually happening in the Finder. So if you are going to be using multiple apps to view the same folder structure, you got to make sure that you don't go changing them, or you're going to find that you'll launch another app and you won't be able to find your pictures anymore because it will have lost track of them. So just some basic stuff to get that out of the way to start with here. So at the top here, you'll see it says folders. We're looking at my local drives and my cloud storage drive, so I can actually browse photos on my cloud storage. I'm going to go ahead into my main hard drive here and just kind of start drilling down. I'm going to drill into my user. There's me, pictures folder. And here you see down at the bottom, I've got this Lightroom Classic catalog. And the folder that I want to look at is this one called Slovenia. So I look at this, and here's all the pictures in here. And in fact, I'm going to grab a different one. There's not a whole lot in here, but I'm going to grab another folder here, which I haven't looked at before. I have not clicked on this before. And granted, there weren't that many pictures in here, but you saw how it essentially instantly drew. Let me go to another one. Click on this. I think this only has a few on there. Yeah, a small collection of photos. Again, basically instantly drawing on there. So those have not been looked at before. I have not yet pointed ON1 Photo RAW at those folders, but essentially the instant that I did, the thumbnails were there. So it is very, very fast in that regard. For browsing, super, super quick. Now I have already looked at this Slovenia folder up here. And in fact, what I did to that as well was that I added it to my cataloged folder. So that's where I mentioned earlier that you have cataloged folders that you can save where it kind of stores its metadata, pre-caches things, if you will, to make sure that it's really, really fast to browse. And the way that you do that is you can either, let's just say I wanted to do, let's do this grain samples one. I wanted to add that one in. I can just drag and drop it up to here. So that'll work. Or I can right click on it. And the font is really quite small. I'd like to point that out right now. I'm going to zoom in on here a little bit, and I could say add to catalog folders. And that is going to then add that up here, and then that metadata will get stored in there. So it's easy and quick to find later. Once you're looking in here, you're browsing through these photos in thumbnail view. You'll see that you have pretty much the standard kind of things you would expect to find. You have star ratings, so I can tap on that to go give it a 2, 3, 4, 5-star rating, whatever I want. There is a little icon to the right of that that allows you to choose a color. So if you want to do color flagging, you can do that. And then there is a favorites over here. So favorites or flag. Different apps call them different names, but it's essentially the same metadata. So you've got your ratings, you have your colors, and your favorite or flag or whatever you'd like to call it. Again, universal metadata there. So so you have all the standard formats that you would expect to have in any proper professional photo editing app to do your sorting and rating. Of course, you have keyboard shortcuts for all of these as well. So if I hit 3, you can see it's giving it 3 stars. If I hit 5, it gives it 5 stars. And then the color ones are also keyboard shortcutted with numbers. So if I hit 6, 7, 8, 9, you can see the colors changing. I'll zoom in real close on there. 6, 7, 8, 9, you can see the colors changing on how that works. So there's your basic just rating in there. So if you're going to go through and start culling your photos, you can very quickly go and mark it to 3 stars and move to the next one. And there's even functionality in here that's quite nice to automatically advance. So if you're doing a fast cull, you want to go through your photos and rate them really quickly. You're looking at your photo, you hit, say, 3 stars. Instead of having to hit 3 stars and then advance to the next picture, you can set it so that you hit 3 stars and it then immediately goes to the next one. So you're just going 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, and it just boom, 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 advances to the next picture each time. Pretty neat. Okay, so basic rating in there. Let's see here. So there's our just basic, that's what we got for basic rating. Over here on the side, on the right-hand side, you have your info panel. This is where you're going to find your metadata on the picture. So if I look at this, I can see a shot was the DJI camera. That was with my drone. The settings on there, it's got a GPS button telling me it has GPS data. If I click on that, it doesn't show me the map inside of the app itself, but it will launch your browser and pull it up into Google Maps, and you can see the GPS coordinates up there. So it just drops it on the map exactly where it was. You have other metadata under here as you would expect to find, your exposure information, file information. You can go in and put in your metadata like your creator name, keywords, and so on. And a lot of that you would do on import if you had imported them from a card. And then underneath this, you have EXIF data and IPTC data. So you have all the metadata that you expect to have. You have access to all that in here. If you don't want it, you can just kind of hide that away, hit none. Back over here on the left-hand side, so we saw the local drives, how we added these in, cloud storage, same thing, dig into your Dropbox, Google Drive, or OneDrive, and those are just built in by default. You click on it, it'll log you in for the first time. And then under that, you have albums. So albums is where you can start organizing things how you want to, but outside of the Finder. So if you go into the Finder and you just wanted to import everything into folders by year or year and date, or you wanted to load them by project name or whatever, any system that you want in the Finder, you can have a totally separate system inside of ON1 Photo RAW, that is going to have them organized exactly how you want just in this app. This isn't going to affect what's happening in the Finder. This is a virtual organization, if you will. And these can be standard albums that you just drag things into, or they can be smart albums that automatically populate based off of certain criteria. So for example, let's just say I'll grab like these 3 pictures here and I go, okay, I like these for whatever reason. You'll see over here it says drag here for new album. So I can just take these, drag it onto that spot. It pops up a new dialog, give it a name. I'm going to call it, ooh, I like these. And I'm going to leave the checkbox enabled, add selected items. So I click on that, tap that, and it adds it in here, and where'd it goes? There it is. Ooh, I like these. It's now been added, and there's that album. You can tell by the icon in here that it's a standard album. The one with the little tiny gear on it is going to be a smart album. If I want to make a smart album, I can go to the plus menu here and say Create Smart Album, and then I can do whatever I want in here. So we'll say, I don't know, let's do, say, 2-star, let's do 2-star DJI photos. So I'll go and I'll say I want to make it 2-star rated, and I'm going to search by camera type, and it gives me a drop down of all the cameras that it's already seen in its database. And in this case, I don't know why it's called this, but it is the FC2103. That is the DJI Mavic Air. So I'm going to select that, hit OK, and hopefully there will be something in there, 2-star DJI. Yep, sure enough, there's a few photos that are rated 2-star or above. So you got your smart albums and your standard albums. You can organize these however you like. Underneath that, you have more filtering. So essentially the same kind of thing we just looked at in smart albums, but just as a quick filter. So if we were to, let's go back to this main Slovenia folder in here. Let me actually rate a couple more, give that one 3 stars, and give that one 2 stars, and give that one 4 stars, and give that one 1 star. And then I go back down here to filters. I can say, just show me my 1 star, just show me my 2 star, 3 star, and so on. And then filter by color ratings on there. You can filter based off of time, just captured today, the last week, or whatever. You can open up a calendar and say, started between point time A and time B. You can type whatever you want into there. And you can also restrict it to searching in the catalog folders. There's a lot of different things you can do in here to filter, but this is basically a simple filtering for the view that you're looking at there. Then you get into your tethered shooting controls. That's something that we will be looking at in a future video. We'll dive into the tethered controls and see exactly what you've got. But you do have tethered support. It's not going to support every camera manufacturer out there, but it's going to support the main ones, and Canon, Nikon, and so on will be supported in that. Then, let's see here, let's go down to the bottom here. You've got a few icons just giving you a few different visual controls. I can hide the panel on the left there. I can tap on the question mark here to open up a web page with a help system. So if I got a question, it's all there. This takes us into our preferences. I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. We are going to take a quick tour through the prefs. And then your views, you get your grid or thumbnail view, your single image view, and then you can view it with both at the same time. So you got your viewer, if you will, and then your thumbnails underneath it. And then this is a compare mode. So if I go back to the main view and I select 3 photos, they're selected, but I'm only seeing the primary photo loaded up here. If I go into the compare view, then I'm going to see all those photos up there, which is great. So this is a really nice way to, let's just pretend that these are 3 virtually the same pictures, and I go, I don't think I like that one. Let's deselect that one. Yeah, we're going to deselect that one next, and there's my winner. So a couple of different nice little views in there that you've got. Let's go back into the preferences because I do want to take a real quick tour through here. And again, I just want to remind you, this is meant to be a very rapid fire tour. So if you're seeing things going, whoa, back up, there's more information, I want to know more, that is what the extended training will be all about. This is just a high level overview, give you a taste of what's here. In the preferences under general, you have a few UI controls. You can change the background color, the accent color if you don't like the orange highlighting that's in there. You can go into the file support and change how files are handled. They're PSDs. When you're saving them out, they're going to go to PSD, TIFF, or JPEG. Here's something that a lot of Aperture users are going to be very, very happy about if they haven't seen this. Treat RAW plus JPEG pairs as a single photo. This is one of my personal pet peeves about essentially every app out there other than Apple's Aperture, and no one has still done this really well, except it looks like these guys are doing it. The handling of RAW and JPEG. If you're shooting simultaneously RAW and JPEG, you don't necessarily want to have 2 separate pictures. You want the system to treat them as a single pair, and that is what this will do. So kudos to you guys for having that in there. All right. Plugin support, basic system memory uses, and so on. Services, so if you want to just hide out that Microsoft OneDrive, for example, you can do that. I'll hide that because I don't use it, and that should disappear from that list. And then mobile. There actually is a mobile workflow. It's minimal. It's minimal, but it exists. And essentially the way it works is once you connect it to either Dropbox or Google Drive, your choice. And I've already done this. I set it up to Google Drive. And in fact, so we're going to do this here. I'm going to show you how it looks. You can browse your pictures that you have deemed to be worthy of being seen on your mobile view, and they will show up on your mobile phone on the iOS app. And it just says iOS. I guess there isn't an Android app to show you what's in there. So let's do this real quick. So this is my iPhone. We can see I've synced a couple of folders over. So there's the DJI DNG. So this is a smart album that I created earlier. Or I can say, just look at my 5 stars. I see it there. It says changes detected. I tap on that. It's going to refresh. I guess there weren't changes. And I see what's in there. Those pictures are over here. Let's get out of this. Part of my albums on here, and you'll see two of these albums have this little indicator, this little mobile indicator next to them. Those are the two that I was just looking at. If you right click on that, you can say published in mobile, or of course turn that off if you want to, and it'll take that away. So the way that you get things into mobile is you create an album or a smart album, and then you say publish that to mobile. And anything that falls into that album or smart album will automatically get published up to mobile. Once it's there and your iPhone can see it, all you can really do at this point is do star ratings, color rating. It's just ratings, metadata ratings, that's it. There's no editing tools, or share it. So I think that the most useful case of this is going to be either you've done a big shoot and you want to just sit on your phone and swipe through and kind of mark some of your favorites because you're going to be, I don't know, in the car or on a plane or whatever. You can do that. Or more likely, it's a place to save your favorites. So you'd say, give me just my 5 stars, or give me the ones I've tagged blue, or whatever it is. And those are the ones that I want to have on my phone at all times because, hey, I might want to share this later. I want to have this to show my potential client or whatever it might be. And it's just photos that you have on there. So that's a way to do it. And I think it's smart that it's done by Smart Album. So you can say, show me my 5 stars. So once I rate an image 5 stars, it will automatically show up on my phone. I don't have to then go through and go, all right, I have to remember to add that to the phone. So that's pretty cool. All right, so that's the mobile, and that's the basic tour of the preferences there. Going along the bottom, let's go back to a larger view here. This full thumbnail view, you can do things like change the size of your thumbnails, you can sort by file name or a variety of other things, show contents of subfolders if you're digging into multiple layers of folders. Raw previews, that's something we'll get into later on, resetting and syncing. So syncing is great, so if you have a series of photos that you all want to look the same, you've edited one of them, you can select the one you've edited and synchronize the looks between those. That is essentially it inside of the Browse module. So let's move on for a quick overview, quick look at the next module. Let me, see, I'll pick a picture we'll do for this one here, and we're going to take that into Develop. Now once you're in the Develop mode, you're going to find all the types of controls that you would expect to have in a Develop module. Let's just go ahead and reset everything here, hit Reset All. And you'll see you have your basic tone and color adjustments. You even have camera profiles on here, so that's something we're seeing a little bit more lately across various apps. So we'll say, well, actually, I think that the landscape looked, what do we want, vivid? Yeah, let's do vivid on there. And then you have your basic exposure control, contrast, highlights, midtones, these kind of things, white balance controls, highlight recovery, get into details, sharpening your image, noise reduction, that's nice, a little noise reduction tool in here, lens correction, and then the list ends. And if you're new to this, you might hit the bottom of that list and go, what, that's it? There doesn't seem to be much here. There is a lot more there. It's curiously, I'm going to call it hidden because it's kind of, you have to go through an extra couple of clicks to get to it. Don't quite know why it's hidden this way, but there are more controls in here. If you go back up to the top, there's a Show More button. You click on that, and now you got some more controls in here. So let's zoom into that. You'll see we have black and white, color adjustment, curves, very, very important curves, glow, vignette, transform, split tone, and skin retouching. So all of these, for whatever reason, are deemed to be not necessary to be in your primary view, but if you wanted to get curves, for example, you click on curves, and now it has added curves down to the bottom of the list, and I can do what I would want to do inside of my curves. So there are additional adjustments in there. They're just a little bit kind of tucked out of the way. Over on the left-hand side, we have, back up a level, a bunch of presets. Now, majority of these presets are actually going to be applying effects, so we're going to look at that in just a moment here. But before I jump over there, I want to show you what's really cool about these presets. If I open this up, you'll see a tiny little thumbnail of each one of these applied to your image. But if you click this icon, you get a nice big view. Now this is something I really like. Look, I can make it even bigger. Let's go down to the bottom, make it a little bit bigger. There we go. And so you very quickly can go through dozens, hundreds, thousands of different presets and determine a starting point or just look for that look that you really, really like. I love this. This, I think, is really, really cool. It gives you a very quick and easy way to look at all of your presets that you've built, either the custom, the built-in ones, sorry, or ones that you've made if you start making your own. And to be able to see those in a big, huge thumbnail like that is fantastic. I don't know about you, but often you're going through, especially on your phone, a smaller device, but even on the computer, and you've got dozens of presets, and you can click to apply each one and undo it. That's really the most tedious way. Sometimes it'll show you a little thumbnail preview, but it's like this big. You're going, great, I know that it's going to be blue. That's all I know, thank you. Sometimes, like in Lightroom, as you scroll over them, just run your mouse over them, you see it refresh on the main screen virtually instantly. That's great, but to be able to see all of these in this big, huge thumbnail like that so quickly, I think this is really, really cool. So if you like using presets, you're going to probably find that this is one of the fastest ways to browse a variety of presets and choose a look that you like. Okay, so as I said, a lot of these presets are actually applying. So let's just go ahead and grab one. I'll hit this cyberpunk one here. I click on that, and hello, there we go. Excuse me. I click on that, and if I scroll through here, it hasn't done a whole lot to this image. Looks like it did a little bit to exposure, but that's about it, because the majority of what these are doing is actually under the effects panel. So let me just do a reset on this, and then go into effects. And under effects, you find a bunch more filters. So while we had under develop a lot of standard controls, exposure controls, let's call them more correction controls. Under effects, you get into your creative looks. So you'll find that there are actually a lot more looks than you might have first realized. So it's kind of a three-level thing, right? You go to the adjust module to start, to the develop module starting to start, and you see just a few basic controls, and you think, well, hold on, where's everything else? And then you go, oh, there's more under the show more, and then you find more, and then you go to the effects one, you go, oh, there's even more in here. So there's quite a lot in here. You just have to poke around a little bit to get to each of the different ones. So again, let's just take a quick look at the kind of things that are in here. You've got antique looks, black and white, bleach bypass, a lot of different clearly special effecty kind of looks. So let's just say I apply a bleach bypass to that. We have applied the effect on there, and then I can go in and I can change the look. Each one of these, of course, is going to have its own individual controls. And if you come up with a look that you like, you can save that as a preset. We just go up here and say save preset and call it whatever you want. You call it yay, and you put it into one of the existing folders or add a new category, and you can choose which of the settings are going to be applied to that. So if you can see I've only done effects here, but if I had also applied develop settings or gradient masks, I'd be able to apply those here as well. Or disregard them, which is equally as important. Going back into the develop module real quick, I want to show you that while we do have all these global controls on here, you also have the ability to do gradients or just basically brush in your effect. So on this picture here, let me again, I'm just going to reset this whole thing. Let's say I want to kind of darken the top of this a little bit. It's a little bit too bright at the top on there. If I take the exposure down, well, that's the whole thing. I don't want that. So if I click on, reset this, if I click on local adjustments up here, I have, again, all these controls. Nothing's happening yet because nothing's been applied. At this point, I can start to brush it in, and you can see my brush tools in here. I can make that brush smaller or larger. There's all these brush tools across the top on here. So I can brush this in. That's one thing. Or I'll undo that. Over here on the left, you can choose between brushing or gradient tools. And when I grab the gradient tool, now I can go in here and I can say, right, I'm going to do a gradient. Let's make it real narrow so it's really obvious what's happening in there. The top half of this is being adjusted by whatever adjustment I've applied in here. The bottom half is not, and the dotted lines here are showing me the gradient from affected to not affected. So if I want it to be nice and gentle, I would stretch it out like so. Maybe stick that up to the top, and then obviously it's a little bit too dark on there, so I'd darken that down a little bit, and away we go. Now this map right here that we're drawing is essentially a temporarily adjustable. So I have all these adjustment tools, but then as soon as I apply this or go on to want to add a brush to this as well, we have just rendered that out, if you will. So that's on there now, but I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the brush and start to brush that in. And I've now kind of rendered that into place. So if I look at the mask on here, I can view that mask. I can invert the mask, I can reset it, I can copy the mask, which is really, really cool. So if you're doing complex adjustments, you've done a really complex mask and you want to do the exact same thing or do a different adjustment on the exact same area, you can copy that mask and paste it into somewhere else. That's pretty cool. I like that a lot. So anyway, so you've got full-on masking controls in here for doing your adjustments. They don't have to be applied to the whole image. You can mask them out with gradients or with brushes. You also have over here on the left, you've got a couple of retouching tools. There's something called a perfect eraser. So let's zoom in close to this image on here. Let's say I wanted to get rid of a house on here. I can take my perfect eraser and just kind of paint over that and give it a moment. It'll think about it and boom, the house is gone. So this is one of those tools that your mileage may vary. It depends completely on the type of a scene you're on. If you've got something really simple like a person on a beach, boom, person's gone out of the beach, really nice and easy. If you're trying to remove a person from a crowd of other people, a little bit harder. So it really, again, your mileage may vary. It's definitely one of the things you have to try, but it's great that you do have, at least as a first try, a tool that is essentially could be magical, and if it's not, if it doesn't do what you need it to do, then you can go in and get a little bit more granular, and you can go in with well, here's a full clone and stamp tool, or if you're getting rid of blemishes on someone's face, you can do the retouch tool. So a variety of tools for retouching your image on there. All right, so that's developed. That's everything I want to show you there on this overview. Effects we've already talked about a bit. Then you get into layers. So you do have layer support inside of here. Once you hit that, it renders out the image that you've got into a base layer, and you can then look at your other pictures to start adding them in if you want to do multiple layer pictures. So let's just drag one of these in. It says, am I doing something new, or am I going to add this as a layer? I can add that as a layer, and then once that's in place, I can do things like grab a masking tool in here, and so using the same kind of gradient type tools, I can build a mask between one layer and the one underneath it. So let's span that out a little bit. There we go. So we're starting to, you can see here in the mask, in the layer stack, we're building, well, layers, composite. We're building a composite with multiple layers of photos in there. There is not a text tool. I was digging around a little bit, and it seems like a text tool has been a very, very, very commonly requested feature. It's not in there, don't know why, but there is no text tool. So if you are looking to do composites with text, you will still need to take that somewhere else. But if you're looking to do composites either with multiple photos, or you just want to get a little bit more layery with your effects themselves, then you can go in here and do that. It's an important thing to realize too, is that everything is non-destructive when you're inside of the develop module and the effects module. That's all non-destructive, so you can go in and turn those things off at any time. But if at any point, for any reason, you'd rather be doing those effects as layer stacks, you can do that as well. So there's just multiple ways to work in here, which is kind of nice. So there's layers, and then there's this whole thing called Resize. Now, Resize is one of those things that used to be a totally separate app, and Resize is a very, very good tool for doing scaling down, of course, but really for scaling up. I did a project years and years ago where I was printing huge prints, and even though I was shooting on medium format digital, I still needed these things scaled 150 to 200% to be able to get the full 300 DPI that the very specialized printer I was using wanted, blah, blah, blah. I ended up using what was at the time ON1 Perfect Resize, a standalone app, but that tech has now been built into here. It's just a phenomenal scaling tool. So if you ever need to increase resolution to your images, this is probably the best tool you're going to find out there to do that. It has a couple other really neat tricks in here as well. There's tiling. Well, here, actually, let me show you this. So on output, you can add sharpening on output. So this is great. So you have probably heard many, many times that if you're going to print, you want to sharpen for print, and sharpening for print is different than sharpening for screen. And so if you're going to a printer and you know I'm going to print a 11x14 at 166 DPI, you can do the math on that, punch that into here, and then you can sharpen specifically for that size and resolution on output. So you don't have to sharpen the image and then render it out and scale it and see if the sharpening held up. No, you can apply the sharpening on output, which is really, really cool. Underneath it, you can have filled grain on output. You can tile the picture, cut your picture into multiple pieces, but here's the one that I want to show you, this thing called gallery wrap. If you've ever done a gallery, a canvas wrap type print where you've got a really thick, say 1-inch thick canvas mount, and the canvas is wrapped around this wooden mount, that wrap around is part of your picture, right? But you may not want to crop out part of your picture. So the other option would be to have your picture go to the edge and then just have black wrap on the canvas. So that's not cool. So what this does is it actually mirrors, you can see the edge here, so the blue lines here would indicate the edge of the print, and it just mirrors the opposite end of that so that you have something to wrap around. So all this on the outside here is what would be showing up on the sides, top and bottom of the print, while the main image is there in its entirety on the face. So that's really cool. And then you've got over here on the left, you've got a bunch of different presets for different types of printers. So all that sharpening I talked about, even web and email presets on here for exporting out. So Perfect Resize really is the best way to take your final image and export it out for whatever you want. Print, web, go into video, go into canvas, whatever it's going to be, because it does give you the options to give you a really, really optimized image. If you were to not use ON1 Photo RAW for any of your photo editing, if you were to say, I'm editing in Lightroom or something else, whatever, I'm not going to use this, that one tool, the Perfect Resize, on its own could be worth the price of admission for you, just because it is such a good tool for rendering out your exports. So you would go into, say, Lightroom, and you'd render out a full resolution, 100% size TIFF file without any sharpening up to it, let's say, and then go into Perfect Resize and you put that into a folder, right? Go into Perfect Resize in here, point it at that folder, and find that image, and then export it out in the ways that you want to. So if you want best quality, it's something to consider. Alrighty, so that's perfect resize. Now, there's two more things down here, Pano and Hdr, which we have not gotten to yet. So let me go back into Browse, and I've set aside a couple of images here. So again, these are shot from the drone. There's a 5-image HDR. To do HDR work, you just select those, and you'll see now that I have multiple images selected. These have lit up. Click on HDR, and quite quickly, it's going to build an HDR composite for me. There we go, that's it. From here, I can go in and start playing with the settings. I can dial in the HDR look, how much do I want that to be any particular way. And you have other various settings in here to kind of get the look the way you want it. So there's one tool that we've got in here. I'm going to cancel that. And then the Panoramic, I'm pretty impressed how fast this is. So this is a 21 image Pano. So I'm going to grab that, click on the Pano button in here, and it's going to load the images, and here, I'll do this. I'll make that up nice and big so you can see when it's done. This is for a 21 image panorama. This is going to go together pretty darn quickly. Now, I haven't dug really deeply into this yet. We will do that, of course, once we get to, we'll do an entire video just on panoramas, or at least on HDR on panorama. And we'll see just how good it is when we really get into there. But what you're going to see here is that it is quite quick at taking these images, even all 21 of these things, and creating that Pano. I guess it's still thinking about it here. But you do have that tool built in. So if you're doing panoramas and you're doing HDRs, you do have the ability to mix that up in here. You could even do a combination, right? You could do an HDR Pano. So you could do a Pano, probably not from the air, but you could do a Pano with bracketing, and then stitch those together so you build 3 Panos, and then take those 3 Panos or 5 Panos, whatever it is, and build that into an HDR. Could be kind of cool. So there we go, that's done. We look over here and you can see a preview. Looks like we've got a little shading, little shadowing happening up here, so we'd have to play with that, see what's going on. But you've got that's all put together. So there you go, that's it, that's all there is to it. And then we save that out if we were actually going to keep that. That I do believe is, bottom right here, last things, exporting and sharing. So we can export our images. That's just going to take me to a standard export module. Let's cancel that. You have a share to your standard social media sites, and that's, and this just hides that panel there. So nice sharing and exporting all built in. And that is that. That is your basic overview. So once again, if now that you've seen this basic overview, if you're looking at that thinking, ooh, I want to learn more about it, then PhotoJoseph.com is the place to see it. Let me actually show you something real quickly here.